A woman's life is on the edge. The man who finds her isn't a savior. He's a warrior. And his rescue comes with a price that will echo across the land. She was running from a life of terror, only to collapse in the unforgiving Arizona desert. When Elara Boone opens her cracked lips to beg for water, the shadow that falls over her belongs to an Apache man. He offers her life, but with a stunning demand. In perfect English, he looks down at her and says, "I will save you, but you must be my wife." What desperate secret is he hiding, and what will she sacrifice to survive? The sky was a sheet of white-hot iron. Elara Boone knew with chilling certainty that this was where her story would end. Not in the fine parlors of Salvation Creek, not as the unwilling bride of the town's most powerful man, but here in the dust with her body swelling from thirst and her hope already dead. Her horse, a reliable bay named Promise, had broken its leg in a ravine 2 days ago. The sound of the gunshot she'd used to put the animal out of its misery still echoed in her ears. A flat final crack that sealed her fate. She was running from Seth Montgomery to the people of Salvation Creek. Seth Montgomery was a pillar. He had arrived 3 years prior, with silver-tongued charm and a wagon full of investment money. He'd built the town's first bank, funded the new church, and had Sheriff Clay Rourke in his pocket. He was handsome, devout, and utterly magnetic. He was also a monster. Elara had seen it. Her father, Corwin Hayes, had been one of the few men to stand against Montgomery's aggressive expansion. Corwin was a quiet man, a rancher who knew the land, who traded fairly with the local tribes and kept meticulous journals. 6 months ago, Corwin was found dead. A tragic riding accident, the report signed by Sheriff Clay Rourke had said. Within a week, Seth Montgomery had produced a stack of debt papers claiming Corwin had mortgaged their ranch, the Double H to the hilt. He also produced a marriage proposal for Elara. "Marry May." He'd cooed, his hand brushing her cheek in a way that made her skin crawl. "And I will forgive your father's debts. We can be a family." Elara knew those debt papers were forged. She knew her father's accident was murder. And she knew that the night of the wedding, Seth would not be looking for a wife. But for the one thing her father had hidden, the original land deed and his personal journals, which contained the real ledgers of Montgomery's finances. So 2 nights before her wedding, she fled. She packed a saddlebag with her father's journals, a canteen, and a loaded Colt, and rode Promise east toward Fort Grant, hoping to find a U.S. Marshal. Now the journals were buried under a rock miles back, heavy and useless. The canteen was a dry husk, the Colt an agonizing weight on her hip. "Please," she rasped to no one. Her tongue was a swollen wooden thing. She clawed at the cracked earth, her fingernails breaking. She was so tired. Just a moment of rest. Just one moment in the shade. A shadow fell across her face. It wasn't the shadow of a cloud. It was sharp, defined, human. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a dull, painful thud. Seth Montgomery. He'd found her. She fumbled for the Colt, her hand shaking. But the man who stood over her wasn't Seth Montgomery. He was tall, with the kind of stillness that seemed carved from the surrounding red rock. He wore buckskin leggings and a simple linen shirt. His black hair was held back by a leather band. A knife was sheathed at his belt, a bow strung over his shoulder. He was Apache. Elara had heard stories. The whispers in town were of raids of savagery. But this man, he just watched her. His eyes, dark and assessing, held no pity, but no malice either. They were just deep. He unhooked a water skin from his hip and uncorked it. He knelt not too close and set it on the ground near her hand. A trap. A trick. She didn't care. With a sob, she lunged for it, grabbing the skin with both hands and bringing it to her lips. The water was warm, metallic, and the most wonderful thing she had ever tasted. She drank greedily, spilling it down her chin, until the man's hand gently but firmly tilted the skin away. "Slowly," he said, the voice shocked her more than the water. It wasn't the broken pidgin English of the reservation Indians who came to town. It was perfect cultured, even low and resonant. She stared at him, panting. Who are you?" "I am Koa," he said. He watched her, his gaze unwavering. "Please," she begged, the water giving her voice a fragile strength. "Help me. I need to get to Fort Grant. My fiancé, I'm in danger." Koa's expression didn't change. He seemed to look through her, as if weighing her soul. "You are in danger, yes." "He's a powerful man," she whispered, tears of desperation and exhaustion streaking the grime on her cheeks. "Seth Montgomery. He will kill me if he finds me." "He will not find you," Koa said. A wave of relief so profound it nearly made her pass out washed over her. "Thank you. God, thank you. If you take me to Fort Grant, I have money. I can pay you." The man stood. He was impossibly tall, silhouetted against the blinding sun. He looked down at her, a crumpled, half-dead thing in the dust. "I will not take you to Fort Grant," he said. Her blood ran cold. "What, but you said you'd help." "I said he will not find you," Koa replied, his voice flat. "And he will not. I will save you from the sun. I will save you from Seth Montgomery." He took a step closer. Elara flinched. "I will save you," he repeated. "But you must be my wife." Elara's mind, fogged by heat and dehydration, struggled to process the words. It was a language she didn't understand, a hallucination, a cruel fever dream joke. What did you say?" "You heard me," Koa said. He crossed his arms, patient as a mountain. "I will give you water. I will give you food. I will hide you from the man you fear. In return, you will come with me. You will be my wife." Rage potent and sudden eclipsed her fear. "No!" She spat the word. "Absolutely not. I'll die first." "You are dying," he countered with no emotion at all. "And you have run from one cage only to find another." That sentence struck her. How did he know? How could this stranger in the middle of this God-forsaken wilderness know the precise nature of her terror? "Who are you?" she demanded again, trying to push herself up on her elbows. "I told you, I am Koa of the Chiricahua." He looked away from her, scanning the horizon. "My demand is not a whim. It is a bargain. My son is sick." This was not what she expected. Her anger faltered, replaced by confusion. "Your son?" His gaze returned to her, and for the first time she saw a flicker of something beneath the stone. It was a deep, aching pain. "He is 5 years old. His name is Tarek. His mother died last winter. Since then, he does not speak. He does not eat. He fades." He knelt again, this time closer. "Our medicine woman, Sira. She had a vision. She said my son's spirit is tied to a white woman lost in the sun, a woman with hair the color of dry grass and eyes like the August sky. She said I must find her. She said I must bind her to our people, to my son." Elara stared at him. This was madness, utter primitive madness. "So you think I'm this vision?" "I think you are here," he said simply. "And I think you are running, and I am offering you a different path." "A path into slavery," she cried. "I just fled one forced marriage. I will not be bartered into another." "Is it slavery?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "To be given life, to be given protection. The man you flee, Seth Montgomery, he wants your land. He wants your body. He wants your silence. He will not stop hunting you. How do you know his name? How do you know any of this?" Koa reached into a pouch at his belt. He pulled out a small, intricately carved object. and placed it in her palm. Elara gasped. Her vision swam. It was a bird, a tiny mockingbird carved from cottonwood. I made this. She whispered, her fingers tracing the familiar lines. When I was 10, I gave it to my father. Where did you get this? I found it near your father's ranch, Koa said. Many years ago, Corwin Hayes. He was a good man. He traded with us. He did not poison the water. Poison? What are you talking about? It does not matter. Koa stood. The choice is yours. Stay here and wait for the sun or the snakes or for Seth Montgomery's trackers. Or come with me, be my wife, and live. He was offering her an impossible choice, but it was a choice Seth Montgomery had never offered her. She looked at the vast, empty desert. She looked at the carved bird in her hand. She looked at the tall, imposing warrior who spoke of sick children and visions. I will come with you. She finally rasped, her voice breaking. I will come to survive. But this marriage, it is the only way, he said, his voice final. My people must see it. My son must feel it. It is a binding promise, not of affection, but of purpose. And he didn't wait for another answer. He gently took the water skin from her, corked it, and then, before she could protest, he stooped and lifted her. She was shockingly light. She gave a small cry of protest, but she had no strength left. He placed her on his horse, a lean, spotted Appaloosa, and then mounted behind her, his arm a steel band around her waist, holding her upright. Rest, he commanded. Elara Boone, who had fled one prison, closed her eyes and leaned back against the chest of her captor, her savior, her new master. As the horse began to move, she fell into a dead faint. The little carved bird clutched tight in her hand. When Elara woke, the world was soft and dark. She wasn't on the desert floor. She was lying on a pallet of soft furs, inside a structure of bent willow branches and hides. A wiki up. The air smelled of wood smoke, dried herbs, and something else. Something savory. A small contained fire burned in the center, the smoke rising through a hole in this roof. A woman's voice hummed a low, repetitive tune. Elara sat up, her muscles screaming in protest. The world spun. Gently, child. An older woman, her face a beautiful map of wrinkles, knelt by the fire, stirring a pot. Her hair was gray, her eyes as dark and bright as polished obsidian. This must be Sira, the medicine woman, Elara thought. Where am I? Elara's voice was hoarse. You are in the rancheria, Sira said, not looking up. You are in the home of Koa. You are safe from the sun. Safe. Elara repeated the word, tasting bitter. Am I a prisoner? Sira finally looked at her. Her gaze was not unkind. We are all prisoners of something, child of the land, of our promises, of the men who hunt us. She ladled some steaming broth into a clay bowl. Koa is not a jailer. He is a complicated man. He told me about his son. Sira's face softened. Yes, Tarek. She nodded toward a small bundle of furs in the darkest corner of the wiki-up. He is there. Elara squinted. A small boy, perhaps 5 years old, was sitting with his back against the wall. He was watching her. His eyes weren't the curious eyes of a child. They were hollow, empty. He has not spoken, Sira whispered. Since his mother, Apache, walked the star path. She died of the ghost sickness. The ghost sickness? Elara asked, taking the offered bowl of broth. It was warm and rich, and she drank it, feeling life flood back into her. It came with the new moon last winter, Sira said, her voice dropping. A sickness of the water. It wastes the body. Apache. She was the first but not the last. 3 others have followed. The creek. Our spring. It is turning against us. Elara froze, the bowl halfway to her lips. Poisoned water, the Koa said. My father didn't poison the water. Sira's eyes sharpened. Your father was a liar's haze. He knew this land. He knew the Chiricahua. He respected the borders. Then he came. Seth Montgomery, Elara whispered. The man with the snake's tongue. He offered to buy this land. Our land. Koa, as the war chief, refused. Montgomery smiled. And 2 weeks later, the sickness began. The pieces began to click into place, forming a picture of such profound evil. It made Elara's stomach turn. Seth Montgomery wasn't just grabbing land. He was cleansing it. He's poisoning you, she said, her voice shaking with a new cold fury. To drive you off, or kill you all. The men believe it is a curse, Sira said. But I have seen what the white man's medicine can do. I have seen the strange salty powder he leaves by the rocks. A man's shadow filled the doorway. Koa entered, ducking his head. He looked at Elara, then at Sira, then at the empty bowl in Elara's hands, a flicker of something. Approval. It was gone as quickly as it came. You are awake, he said. It wasn't a question. Your wife is dead because of him, Elara said, finding her strength. Your son is sick because of him. My son is sick of grief, Koa said, his voice hard. The poison in the water kills the body. The poison of Seth Montgomery, it kills the spirit. Koa walked over to his son. He knelt, placing a hand on Tarek's head. The boy didn't react. He didn't lean in or pull away. He just existed. Koa's hand, which Elara Boone had seen, was strong enough to break a branch, but it was impossibly gentle. He needs a mother, Koa said, his back to her. He needs balance. The vision said so. I am not a mother, Elara said, her voice small. I am just a woman, running for her life. You are a woman who understands his enemy, Koa said, rising. He turned to face her. That is a start. His gaze was intense. This marriage, it is not what you think. I will not touch you. It is a political bond, a joining of paths. What do you mean? Elara asked. This camp is divided. He explained, his voice low. Another warrior, Jotek. He believes my way is weak. He wanted Alape. He thinks I am a fool for trusting the white man's way. What white man's way? Elara asked. My mother, Koa said, a rare shadow of personal history crossing his features. She was captured by settlers as a girl. She lived in a mission. She learned your language, your ways. When she was rescued by our people, she taught me. I know how the white man thinks. I know his words. Jotek says this knowledge has made me soft. He says we should raid, burn, kill, like the ghost sickness is a sign. And Seth Montgomery, does he know about this division? Elara asked. Montgomery knows everything, Koa said bitterly, and he is using it. He wants the land. Land he knows has silver. Elara's head snapped up. Silver! My father, she whispered. My father's journals. He was a geologist. He kept maps of the water sources and mineral deposits. Koa took a step toward the water. Where are these journals? I buried them back in the desert. Before I collapsed. These journals, Koa said, his eyes boring into hers. They prove Montgomery is a killer. They prove the land is ours. They prove he's a liar, Elara said. They show my father's real ledgers. They show the ranch was profitable. They show everything. A slow, terrible understanding dawned on Koa's face. He wasn't just fighting a land grabber. He was fighting a man who had a map to the heart of the Chiricahua. This is why, Koa said, his voice a low growl. This is why he poisons us, to get us off the land before anyone else finds out. He looked at Elara, and for the first time she didn't see a captor. She saw an ally. He needs those journals, Koa said. And you? You are the only one who knows where they are. He thinks I'm dead, Elara whispered. Not for long, Koa said. His trackers will find your horse. They will find your tracks. They will know you did not die of thirst. He looked at her, his jaw set. You are no longer just running Elara Boone. You are being hunted. And this marriage, it is the only thing that will keep you alive. You will be my wife. You will be one of us. And you will help me save my people. And I will help you destroy the man who took your father. The bargain, as Koa called it, was no longer about survival. It was about vengeance. It was about justice. The revelation of her father's murder, followed by the truth of Montgomery's methodical poisoning of an entire people, had burned away the last of Elara's fear, replacing it with a cold, clear, burning rage. I will do it, she said, her voice steady. I will be your wife in name and in this fight. It must be seen, Sira interjected, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Jotek watches. He smells weakness on Koa. He says Koa's white man knowledge has brought this sickness. Jotek, Koa explained, believes we should join the war parties far to the south. He wants to abandon this land and take blood for blood. But this is your home, Elara said. It is, Koa agreed, and I will not be driven from it by a coward with poison. The wedding was that evening. It was nothing like the nascent affair Seth Montgomery had planned. There was no church, no preacher, no white dress. Sirah dressed Elara in a simple, beautifully beaded buckskin dress that had belonged to Koa's mother. It was soft, supple, and felt more real than any silk corset she had ever worn. Sira braided her hair, weaving in 2 red-tailed hawk feathers. The entire rancheria gathered in the center of the camp. Elara Boone walked with Koa, her head held high. She could feel the stares. The children were curious. The women were wary. The men were divided. She saw one in particular, a man with a scarred face and eyes full of contempt. He stood apart from the others. Jotek, Koa, and Elara stood before Sira, who held a burning twist of sage, letting the smoke wash over them. We are here, Sira announced, her voice carrying on the cool evening air, to join 2 paths. The path of the warrior Koa and the path of the lost woman Elara. She spoke of balance. The man as the mountain, the woman as the water, the man as the bow, the woman as the arrows fletching. Then Sira took a strip of soft leather and bound Elara's left wrist to Koa's right. His skin was warm. You are now one people, Sira declared. Her enemies are his enemies. His people are hers. What is done is done. There was a quiet murmur. Koa turned to her. His face was unreadable in the firelight. He placed his free hand on her shoulder, not a gesture of affection, but of possession, of protection. It was a clear signal to Jotek, and to everyone else, she is mine. She is one of us. That night in the wickiup, the tension was a living thing. Elara took her place on the pallet of furs. Koa took his own on the other side of the fire pit. In the corner, Tarek watched them both. His small form and knot of silent misery. Days turned into a week. Life in the rancheria was hard, but it was real. Elara, whom Seth Montgomery had treated as a porcelain doll, was surprised by her own resilience. Sira taught her. She learned which herbs to gather to soothe the stomach, which roots to grind for flour. She learned to be quiet, to listen not just to words but to the wind, to the horses, to the silence of a sick child. Her focus became Tarek. She didn't try to mother him. She didn't coo or fuss. She simply sat with him. While Koa and the other men were out on patrol hunting or watching for Montgomery's men, she would sit in the wickiup and sketch. She had always been an artist. She used a charred stick on a flat, pale piece of sandstone. She drew the horse she'd lost. She drew the mountains. She drew the little carved bird Koa had returned to her, which she now wore on a leather thong around her neck. She would talk not to him, but near him. "This was my horse. Promise," she'd murmur, sketching the bay. "He was very brave. I miss him. This is the mountain Koa calls the sleeping giant. That I think he looks more like a sleeping coyote. Don't you?" Tarek never responded. He just watched. One afternoon, she was drawing the bird. "My father gave me the wood for this," she said softly. "He said, mockingbirds are the bravest because they sing their own song and everyone else is too afraid." She felt a movement beside her. She didn't look up, afraid to break the spell. A small, thin hand brown from the sun reached out. His fingers smudged with dirt, slowly, tentatively touched the drawing. Elara's heart stopped. He traced the outline of the bird's wing, and then a sound. It was tiny. A dry scraping sound like dry leaves. A word. "Bird," he whispered. Elara's eyes filled with tears. She didn't dare move. She just nodded, her throat tight. "Yes, a bird." He looked up at her, his hollow eyes suddenly shockingly present. He saw her. When Koa returned that evening, he stopped dead in the entrance of the wickiup. His son was not in the corner. He was asleep on Elara's pallet, his small hand clutching the leather thong around her neck, his fingers resting on the small wooden mockingbird. Elara, her back against the willow frame, was also asleep. Her head tilted, her hand resting on the boy's back. Koa stood there for a long time, watching the slow, steady rise and fall of their breathing. The medicine woman's vision. It had been true. This white woman, this strange, broken and strong woman, she had brought his son's spirit back from the edge. He looked at his wife, and for the first time the word wife did not feel like a bargain. It felt like a beginning. The shift in the camp was immediate. The news that Tarek had spoken his first word in almost a year, and to the white woman, flew through the rancheria faster than a hawk's shadow. The women who had been wary now brought Elara small gifts, a pouch of sweet berries, a well-made scraping tool. They saw her not as Koa's burden, but as the boy's salvation. But as the camp's respect for Elara Boone grew, so did Jotek's resentment. He saw his influence slipping away. He saw Koa, who had once been weakened by grief, now growing stronger with this strange new alliance. Jotek, who had preyed on Koa's pain, now found himself on the outside, and then he vanished. One morning he and 3 other warriors who had been loyal to him were gone. Their wickiups were empty. Their horses were gone. "He's gone to raid the settlers," one elder said, his face grim. "No." Koa set his eyes on the horizon. "He's gone to make a deal." Elara Boone felt a cold dread. "With Montgomery, Jotek is a fool." Koa said, his voice laced with contempt. "He thinks he can use the white man's silver to buy power. He doesn't see that Montgomery is the snake and he is just the mouse." The tension in the camp was thick enough to cut. Koa doubled the patrols. He sent scouts to watch the creek, to watch the mountain passes. And he began to train Elara. "You must learn to defend yourself," he said, handing her a knife. "Not just with this." He tapped the Colt at her hip, which he had cleaned and loaded for her. "This is loud. It speaks to the whole desert. A knife whispers," and he was a harsh teacher. He showed her how to use her attacker's weight against them, how to strike, to disable, not to wound. He taught her the language of the knife, as he called it, a silent, deadly conversation. But he also taught her other things. He took her with Tarek on his shoulders to the high places. He showed her how to read the land. "You see that dust?" He'd point miles away. "Too small for wagons. Too slow for warriors. It is a single rider leading a pack mule, probably a prospector. You see the way those rabbits are running. Something is in the rocks. Not a man. A mountain lion. A man's shadow would have made them scatter." She in turn talked to him. She told him about her father's journals. He wasn't just a rancher, she explained, as they watched Tarek try to catch lizards in the sun. He was working for the government unofficially. He was mapping the territory for the railroad surveys. That's how he found the silver. That's why his ledgers were so perfect. He was tracking everything. Seth Montgomery. Montgomery must have found out. He must have wanted those maps, not just the ranch. So Montgomery is not just a murderer. Koa said, his face darkening. He is a thief stealing from his own great father in Washington. It means, Elara realized, he has more to lose than we thought. It means he's not just breaking local laws. He's committing a federal crime. This revelation changed everything. They didn't just have to kill Montgomery. They had to expose him. The scouts returned 2 days later. Their horses were lathered, their eyes wide with fear. Wagons. The lead scout, a young man named Tavin, reported to Koa. Not settlers. Rifles. What kind? Koa's voice was sharp. The new kind. The many-shot rifles. Henry's. How many? Too many. A full wagon load. And Jotek was there. He was with the white men. He was dressed like them. The final betrayal. Jotek hadn't just fled. He'd allied with their enemy. Koa's face was a mask of thunder. Montgomery's plan. He's not just poisoning us. He's arming our enemies against us. He'll use Jotek to wipe us out. Then tell the cavalry that the wild Apaches are at war. He'll be a hero. He turned to Elara. The time for hiding is over. My father's journals, she said, her voice shaking. They're the key. They prove the silver is here. They prove Montgomery knew it. They prove he's the one with the motive. They are buried in the desert, Koa said. And Montgomery's men are hunting for them. Hunting for you. Then I have to go back, she said, her hand instinctively going to the Colt at her hip. Koa looked at her, at the fire in her August sky eyes, at the set of her jaw. She was no longer the broken woman he'd found in the dust. She was a warrior. No, he said. We go back. Riding into Salvation Creek was like walking into her own funeral. Elara Boone was disguised. Her hair was hidden under a drab bonnet, her figure lost in a shapeless, dust-colored dress Sira had found. Koa was transformed. He wore the clothes of a simple vaquero. Worn denim trousers, a dusty shirt, a low-brimmed hat. He looked like any of the countless ranch hands who drifted through the territory. But his stillness, the way his eyes constantly scanned the rooftops, betrayed him. He was a predator walking into a town of sheep. They'd buried her father's journals near an old creek bed miles from the ranch. It had taken a day to retrieve them. Elara had wept as she'd held the leather-bound books. Their pages filled with her father's neat, precise script. The maps, the ledgers, the notes on the unusual mineral deposits. It was all there. Now the plan was simple and incredibly dangerous. You go to the sheriff, Koa had instructed. Sheriff Clay Rourke. You said he was your father's friend. He was, Elara said. But he signed the accident report. He let Montgomery. I don't know if I can trust him. We have no choice, Koa said. I will be close. If Rourke is a snake, I will know. Elara clutched the satchel containing the journals. And what if Montgomery finds me first? He will not, Koa said, with a certainty that was both terrifying and comforting. She walked down the main street. It was a ghost town of her own life. She saw Lena Stroud, the baker who had clucked her tongue about Elara Boone's poor choice in fleeing her wedding. She saw Bram Hargrove, the blacksmith, who now worked for Seth Montgomery. She walked into the sheriff's office. Sheriff Clay Rourke was at his desk, his boots up, a cup of coffee in his hand. He was a big man, gone soft in the middle. his face perpetually flushed. When he saw her, he dropped the cup. It shattered on the floor. "Elara Boone," he whispered, his face going pale. My God! We thought," Montgomery said. "He said the Apaches." Montgomery lied. Elara said, her voice cold. She dropped the satchel on his desk. "He lied about everything." She opened the first journal. "He lied about the debts. He lied about my father's death." Now Elara Rourke blustered. "We don't know that. It was a tragic... He murdered him, Sheriff." Elara Boone's voice cracked. "He murdered him for this." She opened another journal to a map, a detailed geological survey of the Chiricahua Mountains. Rourke's eyes widened. "Sweet mother, is that silver? And he's poisoning the people who live there to get it," Elara said. "And you let him. You signed the papers. You looked the other way." Rourke's face crumbled. He had me. Elara, he had debts. My wife's gambling. I didn't know. I swear. I didn't know about the murder. But you suspected," she said, her voice void of pity. "Now you're going to fix it." Even as she said it, the door of the office opened. "Fix what, my dear?" Seth Montgomery stood in the doorway. He was immaculate as always, in a black frock coat and a silk vest. His smile was wide and welcoming. His eyes were cold, dead things. Behind him stood two of his hired men, one Elara Boone, recognized with a jolt of fear. Gus Stroud, a brutal, simple man, known for his skill with a whip and a gun. "Elara Boone," Montgomery cooed. "You're alive. It's a miracle. I've been organizing search parties for weeks." "Stop lying, Seth Montgomery." Elara Boone said, her hand moving slowly toward the journals lying. "My dear, you must be confused," Montgomery said. "The trauma, the savages. What did they do to you?" He took a step in. "She's not confused, Montgomery," Sheriff Rourke said. He was still pale, but he was standing up. His hand, however, was nowhere near his gun. She has proof." Montgomery's smile faltered. He looked at the journals. He looked at Elara Boone. "The proof," he said, "of a hysterical woman. A woman who ran away from her own wedding." He chuckled. "Sheriff Clay Rourke, arrest her. She's clearly unstable. We'll take her to the sanitarium over in Tucson." "No," Rourke said. "What did you say?" Montgomery's voice dropped. "I said no." Rourke looked at Elara. It stops here. You," Seth Montgomery hissed, "are a fool." He snapped his fingers. Gus Stroud was a blur. He didn't go for Rourke. He went for Elara Boone. He lunged across the desk, grabbing Elara, Boone pulling her up and spinning her around, his massive arm around her throat. His gun was at her temple before Sheriff Clay Rourke could even clear his holster. "Drop it, Sheriff," Gus Stroud snarled, his breath hot and sour on Elara Boone's cheek. "Or she gets it." Sheriff Rourke let his gun belt fall to the floor. Seth Montgomery smiled. He walked over to the desk and picked up a journal. He flipped through it. Ah yes, Corwin Hayes's hobby. Such a meticulous man. A pity. He looked at Elara, his eyes glittering. You have been inconvenient, but this works out. Gus killed the sheriff. Make it look like a suicide. His guilt over losing Elara. "And her?" Gus Stroud asked, tightening his grip on Elara Boone. "Her," Seth Montgomery said, his face hardening, "comes with us. We'll take her back to the ranch. After all, she still knows where the rest of the maps are." He ran a finger down Elara's cheek. "She will tell us." Elara's heart hammered. She had failed. Koa. Where was he? He'd said he'd be close. "No," a voice said. It came from the shadows, by the holding cells. Koa stepped into the light. He wasn't dressed as a vaquero. He was dressed as a warrior. His face was streaked with paint. He held a strung bow, an arrow nocked and aimed directly at Seth Montgomery's heart. He said no, Koa repeated. His voice had deadly calm. Let her go. Seth Montgomery stared. I am Koa. I am her husband. Seth Montgomery laughed. A high, hysterical sound. Her husband. Oh, this is perfect. The savagery. It's too perfect. Let her go, Koa repeated. Or you die. Then he dies. Gus Stroud's arm tightened. He can't shoot us both, boss. No, Seth Montgomery said, his composure returning. He can't. He drew his own pistol, a silver-plated Colt, and pressed it to Elara Boone's other temple. A standoff, Seth Montgomery said, clearly enjoying himself. How very Western. Now, husband, you are going to put down the bow, or I'm going to paint the walls with your wife's August sky eyes. The air in the small office was electric thick with the smell of stale coffee, fear sweat, and the faint, cloying scent of Seth Montgomery's expensive rosewater cologne. Elara Boone was a prisoner in her own body. The iron barrel of Gus Stroud's pistol was a cold, hateful circle pressed against her temple, while Seth Montgomery's silver-plated Colt was a hot, terrifying twin at the other. Gus Stroud's arm was a band of steel across her throat, cutting off her air, forcing her to breathe in the sour whiskey smell of his breath. Her vision was starting to tunnel. Seth Montgomery was panting not from exertion but from a kind of manic, ecstatic rage. He stared at Koa, who stood as still as a red rock spire, the bowstring drawn taut. The obsidian-tipped arrow aimed directly at Seth Montgomery's silk-vested heart. The muscles in Koa's back and arms were cords of potential energy holding a deadly promise. Seth Montgomery giggled. A savage. Seth Montgomery chuckled. A high, unhinged sound that was more terrifying than a shout. You think you can challenge me? In my town. I am not in your town. Koa's voice was a low, calm rumble. It cut through the tension, a sound of pure, cold reason. I am with my wife. Wife! Seth Montgomery shrieked with laughter. Oh, Elara Boone, my delicate flower. What did he trade for you? A string of beads, a lame horse. Did he buy you? Or did you just give yourself away to the first creature you found in the desert? Elara Boone flinched the word, striking her like a slap. Gus Stroud's arm tightened, a brutal reminder of her helplessness. You should have married me, my dear. Seth Montgomery hissed, his face close to hers. You would have been dressed in silks. Now you'll just be dressed in your own blood. He pressed his pistol harder against her skin. A standoff. How dramatic. Now, husband, you are going to put down the bow slowly, or I'm going to paint these walls with your wife's August sky eyes. Elara Boone's heart hammered against her ribs. A frantic bird in a cage. He'll kill us all. He'll kill Koa, then me, then Sheriff Clay Rourke. Koa's gaze was unwavering. It was locked on Seth Montgomery. You are right, he said, his voice as calm as a winter morning. I cannot shoot you both. Seth Montgomery's smile widened, victory gleaming in his eyes. But I do not need to, Koa continued. He will. Seth Montgomery's eyes and everyone else's flicked to the only other he in the room. Sheriff Clay Rourke. Sheriff Rourke, who was standing unarmed by his desk, his face the color of old parchment. He was shaking so hard his spurs rattled. He looked at Seth Montgomery, then at Koa, then at Elara Boone, a picture of pathetic indecision. Seth Montgomery let out a bark of contemptuous laughter. Rourke! He's a coward. He's a neutered dog. He's mine. He'll do nothing but... It was in that half-second, that fractional moment of supreme arrogance, that Elara Boone understood. Koa had not been speaking to Seth Montgomery. He hadn't been speaking to Rourke. He had been speaking to her. The signal was not a word. It was the moment. Seth Montgomery's entire focus, his entire burning, arrogant attention was on the cowardly sheriff. He had dismissed Elara Boone as a victim. He had dismissed Koa as a stereotype. Use your attacker's weight against them. A knife. A knife whispers. The training, the harsh lessons by the creek, the aching muscles, the bruises. It all focused into a single crystalline point of action. Koa was trusting her. He was holding that arrow waiting for her to make the opening. She didn't think. She acted. She let her knees buckle. It was not a fall. It was a conscious, controlled drop, letting her entire weight go slack. Gus Stroud, who had been using her as an upright shield, was suddenly holding dead weight. He was thrown off balance. His body lurched forward, his arm instinctively, reflexively tightening. Now she screamed, the word ripping from her raw throat as she moved. She didn't try to pull away. She drove her right heel backwards and down with all the force of her desperate, terrified body. She wasn't wearing fragile parlor shoes. She was wearing the sturdy leather boots Sierra had given her. The heel connected with the delicate arch of Gus Stroud's instep. A sickening crunch of bone. Gus Stroud roared. It was a sound of pure animal agony. His grip on her throat, his gun at her head. It all vanished. His body spasming in on itself. His arms flying open as he reflexively reached for his ruined foot. That was the window. The single tiny slice of time. 3 sounds exploded. So close they were one. Thwang. The deep, resonant gut punch of Koa's bowstring. A sound of ancient final judgment. Boom. The deafening, echoing blast of a rifle fired inside the office. Crack, the sharp, wild shot of Gus Stroud's pistol firing into the ceiling as his hand convulsed. Elara Boone had already thrown herself sideways, rolling behind the cover of the desk. The air was sulfur and smoke, the room vibrating from the concussions. She coughed, her eyes stinging. Silence. A terrible, ringing silence. Slowly, Elara Boone pushed herself up. The first thing she saw was Seth Montgomery. He was on his knees. His silver-plated pistol clattered uselessly on the floorboards. He was staring with a look of profound, almost comical surprise at the black arrow shaft protruding from the center of his chest. He looked up, his eyes finding Elara Boone's. He opened his mouth. No sound came out, only a single bright red bubble. He pitched forward dead before he hit the floor, his expensive cologne mixing with the smell of his own blood. The second thing she saw was Gus Stroud. He was a crumpled heap by the wall. Sheriff Clay Rourke stood over him, the smoking barrel of a Winchester rifle in his hands. He hadn't shot Gus Stroud. He'd slammed the rifle butt into the side of the man's head, knocking him cold. The third thing she saw was Koa. He was at her side, having moved like a phantom. The bow was gone, a long-bladed knife in his hand. He wasn't looking at the dead man, or the unconscious one. His dark, intense eyes were scanning her, checking for wounds, for any sign of blood that wasn't Seth Montgomery's. Elara Boone. He said just her name. I'm all right. She panted, her voice a ragged whisper. I'm fine. Koa's entire body seemed to deflate. He closed his eyes just for a second and took the deepest breath she had ever seen him take. He sheathed the knife. The immediate lethal danger was gone. Sheriff Clay Rourke, his hands shaking so hard, he could barely hold the rifle, sagged against the wall. It's over, he wheezed. My God, Elara Boone. It's over. The aftermath was a cleansing storm. The U.S. Marshals, who had ridden in from Tucson, summoned by a fast rider from Rourke, were not interested in savage justice. They were interested in Elara Boone's satchel. The journals were a revelation. They weren't the ramblings of a woman. They were the meticulous factual records of a federal contracted geologist. Corwin Hayes had been mapping the territory, and his ledgers proved without a shadow of a doubt that Seth Montgomery had forged the debt papers. The maps proved Montgomery's motive, not just a ranch, but a mountain of silver. The rest of Montgomery's network collapsed like a house of cards. The wagon load of Henry rifles intended for Jotek was seized. Jotek and his rogue band waiting at the rendezvous point were captured by the marshals. Their short-lived rebellion ending not with a bang, but with the clink of irons. The ghost sickness was identified arsenic systematically poured into the Chiricahua Springs. With Montgomery dead and his payroll gone, the poisoning stopped. Elara Boone was a hero, and more than that, she was rich. The Double H Ranch was hers free and clear, its value multiplied 1,000 times by the silver her father had found. A week later, she stood at the edge of Salvation Creek. The dust had settled. The town, now free of Montgomery's shadow, was already rebuilding. Sheriff Clay Rourke, his reputation restored by his somewhat embellished role in the takedown, stood awkwardly beside her. "Well, Miss Hayes," he started, twisting the brim of his hat. "I mean, Mrs. Boone, the Double H is all yours. The foreman, Bram Hargrove, he's waiting on your word. You're the most powerful person in this county now." She looked at the ranch in the distance, a sprawling, beautiful property, her father's legacy, her prison. Koa stood a few paces away, his Appaloosa waiting patiently. He was dressed again as a warrior, his painted vaquero disguise shed. He was watching the mountains, his home. His face was stone. He had known this moment was coming. The bargain was complete. He had saved her. She had saved his people. Their debts were paid. He had given her life. Now he was giving her back to her world. Elara Boone felt a tear slide down her cheek. "Thank you, Sheriff, for everything." She turned and walked to Koa. He didn't look at her, but she knew he felt her presence. "The bargain is complete," she said softly, her voice just for him. "You saved me. I am free. My father is avenged." Koa turned to her, and the controlled emptiness in his eyes, it was worse than any anger. It was loss. He nodded, a single sharp dip of his chin. "You are free, Elara Boone. Your path is clear." He turned to mount his horse to ride out of her life forever. "Wait!" He stopped, his back to her. "You lied to me," she said, her voice shaking. He turned slowly, a dangerous question in his eyes. "I have never lied to you." "Your demand," she said, taking a step closer. You forgot the terms of your own bargain." "The bargain is broken," he said, his voice flat. "You are not. You said you would save me," she interrupted. "And I must be your wife." "You didn't say—" She paused. "You didn't say until I get my ranch back. You didn't say until the bad man is gone." She was standing in front of him now, her head held high. "That man," she said, pointing back at the town, "thinks I'm the most powerful person in the county. He's wrong. The most powerful person I know is a 5-year-old boy who learned to speak again." She reached up her fingers, finding the small, carved mockingbird at her neck. "This ranch, this town, it's my father's legacy. But it's not my life. My life. My life is with my son." She saw his throat move, just once. "Your demand was stunning," she whispered, looking up into his dark, unreadable eyes. I thought it was a prison, but it wasn't. It was a key. It set me free. But you are still bound by it. You are bound to me, Koa, as I am to you." He looked at this impossible woman, this woman of iron and water who had faced death in the desert, who had faced his enemy in a smoke-filled room, who had chosen. Slowly, as if awakening from a long dream, the stone mask cracked. He didn't smile. It was something deeper, something more profound. The haunted, grieving warrior he had been. He was gone. In his place stood just a man. He reached out his hand not to grab, not to take, but to offer. His palm was rough, warm, and strong. Elara Boone placed her hand in his. It fit perfectly. "Come, Indar," he said, his voice low and full, using the Apache word for wife. "Tarek is waiting. We will go home." Elara Boone and Koa's story shows us that sometimes the most stunning demands can lead to the most profound destinies. They found justice not in the laws of the town, but in the truth of their shared hearts. But what do you think happened next? How did a woman from one world and a warrior from another build a life together? What challenges did Tarek face growing up with the strength of two cultures? The frontier was full of stories like this, tales of survival, vengeance, and unexpected love. If you were moved by their story, and if you believe in the power of truth, please let us know. Don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who loves a powerful story, and subscribe to our channel for more tales of karma, justice, and the untamed human spirit. Thank you for listening. All stories are created for entertainment purposes and may include fictional elements or dramatized interpretations inspired by historical settings. We use AI tools, voiceover visuals, scripts as creative assistants. However, all content is reviewed, refined, and edited by humans to ensure emotional authenticity and storytelling quality. We fully comply with YouTube's policies regarding AI-generated content and do not use any deepfake techniques or misleading recreations of real individuals. All visuals and supporting materials are properly licensed. Sharing, re-uploading, modifying, or distributing any part of this content in any form requires written permission. We appreciate your support and respect for original creative work.